Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast, brought to you by Double T 97.3. Alongside Chris Level, I'm Chois Woodman. Thanks to our friends at Cantex Roofing and Construction for sponsoring this podcast.
I'm Mike Hebert, owner of Cantex Roofing and Construction. Every day is game day, and we'll get it right when it comes to your roofing, construction, windows, and mirrors. Call Cantex Roofing and Construction today. Together, we are one serving you.
Level, it's been a couple weeks since we've sat down and chatted, but first I'll get the pleasantries out of the way. How was the Christmas, the New Year's? Get some good time with the family?
Sure. Yeah. It's, I hope everybody else out there that listens to this, that they got the same, and kind of nice to hit pause on the grind of everyday life and all that. But yeah, I mean, for those of us in that are in sports, it's still fairly busy time.
Yeah.
Sports are played and broadcast and talked about quite a bit during the holidays. Everybody likes to sit around and watch football and the hoops and all that, including myself. So, so anyways, but yeah, all good, ready to get back to it. Hope everybody is ready for 2024, and I hope everybody had a safe New Year's Eve and all those kinds of things. A bit tricky out there on those nights.
Yeah.
Out there in them streets.
It can be. It can be.
Yeah.
So there have been a few basketball games. We'll get to questions from the audience, a couple of basketball questions in a little bit. But a few basketball games since we last talked. This is a team getting ready to go into conference play. What is your read on Texas Tech basketball going into league play later this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think they had a really good non-conference portion of their schedule. I think they're maybe playing their best right now. I think that here's some things I think I know about this team. I think they shoot it well. They need to shoot it well. I think they're doing a really good job as far as distributing the ball and not turning it over. At least when they're playing at their best, that's kind of been the formula. And being able to knock down shots. They've got, several guys on the wing that can shoot it. I worry about their, lack of depth. I worry about their ability to rebound. I think everybody in the Big 12, like all 14 teams, come into the conference season like having a better rebounding margin than their opponent. And so something's got to give there when you start pairing these teams up against each other for the next 2.5 months or 2+ months, I should say. And I worry about Texas Tech's ability to kind of hang in there on some of these games in that aspect. But again, if you'll continue to shoot it well, which is a lot to ask, and if you'll continue to because the assist to turnover ratio has been really fun to kind of watch progress. I think Grant really squeezing about everything he can out of this group, and that's good coaching. But yeah, it's none of what you've done to this point really matters, unfortunately, because it's basically just setting the table for what you're about to endure. And, you've got, we'll talk about that as we go along, but I think your first 4 conference games, you've got 2, I want to say, winnable games at home against Oklahoma State and Kansas State. You've got 2 games that are going to be extremely difficult on the road in Austin and at Houston. But again, it's about winning your games at home and then just trying to sneak a few out on the road. That's kind of the formula if you want to bid to the NCAA tournament. So anyway, I think I think it's been kind of a work in progress, but now all the training is done, and now it's like it's time to put on your uniform and go to work.
So two-part question. First, if someone had offered you 11-2 in the non-conference prior to the season, would you have taken that? Second, do you feel any more confident or less confident than you did a few weeks ago, I guess, post Bahamas trip about this basketball team.
I probably would have taken it. Yeah. I think, you obviously, and when you look at their two losses, they played Villanova when Villanova was really good. They've kind of, fallen off a bit since, losing at Butler as well as Butler was playing at the time. There's no shame in that. You took them to overtime. I missed, and one of your best wins on the year is the win over Michigan. They're a mess. Vanderbilt is a mess. So in some ways, your games that we would have pointed to, I don't know if they've told you a ton and maybe haven't really told you much in that maybe you were supposed to win these games kind of thing. I do think some of your home games that your quote unquote guarantee games were tougher on paper than people realize. The San Jose States, I think, I think the UTAs. I think there's
Mhm.
some of some of these teams that came in here are sneaky good, and I think that'll bear out in the coming weeks and months. But yeah, I don't know if I'm. I mean, the Cambridge injury just kills you, man. It
Sure.
just does. I think. And you've tried to reinvent yourself a bit. I think they've done a good job with that. I think one of the bright spots so far has been Kerwin Walton's emergence, his ability to
Absolutely.
score and do some of the other things. I don't know if you get that, obviously, without the Cambridge injury, as weird as that sounds. I think because part of it is like in a half court setting, you're not anywhere near as good as you want to be defensively without Cambridge. I think you're not as good in some cases in your transition offense, like when you're off to the races and you're starting to run. That's where Devin Cambridge was really really good. But I do think though that you've got another shooter out there and somebody else that can score, and it makes you really difficult to guard at some level too, and pick your poison kind of thing when you've got Kerwin Walton and Chance McMillan on the wings, and you've got either Joe Toussaint or Pop Isaacs playing the pick and roll with Warren Washington. It's a lot to try to respect and guard, and something typically is there if you could knock down shots. So that's kind of where it's at. But I don't have any illusions at this point that this is a Big 12 championship, you know, regular
Sure.
season league title contender. I think you're going to have to be really good, and you're not going to have a ton of margin for error if you want to make it to the tournament, because it's going to require you to be possibly 500 or better in the league, and that's going to be a lot to ask. Because I mean, you used to talk about winning
Yeah.
home games. Kansas comes here. You've got some tough home games. So, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with these guys.
Yeah. Overall, I get you got some tough home games, but you'd rather have those tougher games at home
Oh
than
yeah,
on the road,
yeah,
obviously. And,
yes.
and I think the schedule is kind of favorable towards you. You don't have that road trip to Lawrence. You get some of your road trips are like to UCF. It's not. I guess I'm saying it could have been a lot worse when you look at how the schedule could have played out. It's
Oh
not
yeah.
just a beat down. I mean, every game in this league feels like a beat down, but it doesn't feel like it's as bad as it could have been.
Yeah, and there's some teams that I think it's going to be interesting. Like, West Virginia is not very good, but you don't play them until the very end of the conference schedule. I don't know what they'll be in 2 months, basically. Cincinnati is a question mark. UCF is a question mark. Oklahoma State has not been very good. But some of these games are games that you really I don't want to say have to, but you need to win because it's going to be, TCU is really good. Oklahoma is really good. Baylor is really good. And these are teams you get twice, I think. Well, I don't know if you get Oklahoma twice, but you get TCU twice, you get Baylor
Yeah,
twice, you get Texas twice. And those are 6 games that are, and then you get Kansas once, Houston one. I mean, so there's plenty. And in Kansas State, I think it may be good to get them. Right now, they've been kind of going through some turmoil with the Naquan Tomlin stuff, and I don't think they're quite as good as they were last year. But still, I mean, they're that's an Elite Eight team from last year with a lot of pieces back.
sure.
So, anyway, it's it's, like BYU is like a sneaky. I don't know if I mentioned them earlier or not, but they're like a kind of a big surprise and
Yep.
how good that they are. And they've, as good as you've shot the three, I think they have something like 50 or 60 more made threes on the season than you do, which is nuts.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So, but it all starts to even out, and like, you get a lot of results here in the coming weeks that are like, huh, okay, they really were good, or guess what? They weren't as good as their non-conference record showed, and Red Raiders will be right there in the mix trying to figure out, if where they fit into this deal. But I think, what were you picked to finish, like eighth or ninth in the league?
I think it was
That
8.
that seems about right now based on what we know, and it's tougher when you're missing a key piece and a key starter like Devin Cambridge. So
But 8th or
uh,
ninth in this 14-team league still could get you into the tournament. I mean, it's a
could,
yeah, I'm
yeah.
saying could. It's
A lot depends on what
bubblish.
else. A lot of, yeah, what else happens, and all that. But yeah, that's just kind of where you're at. But again, you go win in Austin this weekend, and you kind of change your perspective a little bit. But so I don't know. That's where we're at, I think, right now. After, what are you, 11-2 right now, after the non-conference portion of your,
11 and
and
2.
now
Yeah.
it's just, like I said, it's just conference games uh throughout. There's no more, Big 12 SEC challenge and everything like that. And so now you just kind of buckle up and get ready.
I may eat my words on this level a week from now when we sit back down and do another one of these. But I don't perceive Texas like I do some of the other teams in this league. I look at Texas more the middle of the pack, somewhat closer to Texas Tech than I do a Kansas, a Baylor, a Houston of this league. It feel I don't know. It's a road game in the Big 12, which is always difficult. I'm not saying by any means Texas Tech is going to go into Austin and win, but this doesn't feel as daunting as some of the other games you're going to have coming up later in the schedule. Right or wrong?
Yeah, no, I think I think right now Texas is as good as they've been. They got worked over by their former coach in Marquette.
Yep.
They've you I'm trying to remember their other loss. It was, I think, against another like Big East type team. But I think it was like Creighton or somebody, I want to
Yeah,
say. But
I'm coming up with it.
um yeah, but they're not as talented as they typically are. I think.
UConn,
Okay, UConn. Yeah, which UConn is really good.
they are.
UConn's one of the top teams in the country. So, I it, is it a winnable game? Sure, but it's obviously hard to win in Austin, regardless of the sport that you're playing. But I think right now that's how tough it's going to be to make the tournament. In that, I think right now, if you look at like bracketology and all the projections, I don't even know if Texas, they're barely,
Yeah,
they're like an 11 seed or even not in it, based on, so, and they're, you know I mean, it's, so that's just kind of where it's at right now, as far as what you're looking at and what you're dealing with as far as the Big 12 and NCAA tournament bids and all those things. I would say, though, there's 6 to 8 bids to be had, you would think,
yeah,
but it'll start to kind of clear up. The picture will start to clear up, as we go along. But that's just, just don't have a lot of margin for error here.
yeah. Texas is ranked 20th, but that's purely off of preseason hype at this point. I
I
mean,
know, and rankings don't. I mean,
correct.
yeah,
I mean,
it's all about the net and all those things.
Ken Palm has Texas as 31. Texas Tech is 37 right now. So that kind of shows you that metric and where those teams are according to KenPalm.com. But what is
Yeah, and I'm looking at like the net rankings.
yeah, where
Yeah, so you've got, in the Big 12, you've got like Texas and Texas Tech are right there at, let's see, at 46 and at 49,
there you go.
but
Yeah.
that's I believe ninth and eighth of the Big 12 schools.
Yeah.
The only ones behind you are UCF, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia. And now, having said that, you get a couple of those teams at home, but it just shows you better win those home games.
Got to.
Next week is obviously you play in Austin. this coming weekend, but then the next week you've got 2 home games against Oklahoma State and Kansas State, and that's a huge. You've at the minimum you've got to be 2-1 after the first 3 games of your league schedule. You really just have to, because you only get so many of those home games, and you've got to take advantage of them when you get them.
Yeah.
And those are 2 teams that they're good enough to beat you, but you need to take advantage and try to get that done. So.
Okay, so I got a couple of basketball-esque questions from our Twitter. You could tweet at us at Double T973 if you got questions for the Ask Level podcast. First one from Leah asks, "What's going on with Drew Steffi?"
Well, all I have to go off of is what I guess this is between Drew and his family and the basketball program and all that. Coach McCaslin said after, I can't remember if it was the game after Christmas.
I think
I'm
it
trying to remember.
was.
Yeah, like,
Yep.
hey, yeah, he's not with the team right now for family reasons. I think he wasn't on the bench the game before Christmas. That's the extent of my knowledge, and I'll let them sort through all that as far as, but he was redshirting. That was the plan. And so it doesn't affect this year's team or anything like that as far as, Drew Steffi playing or anything like that. But yeah, I think Grant McCaslam was like, hey, he's welcome to join us back
Right.
at any time, kind of thing. So anyway, that's kind of what the deal is there.
Kelly asks, "What is your Big 12 record prediction for Tech? Do we make the tournament?" Get your crystal ball out and rub it up.
Yeah, you're somewhere in the 8-10, 9-9, 10-8 range, in my opinion, which would be a massive improvement over last year.
Oh yeah.
And I think that is in the sweet spot to make it. But you could, that's kind of where you envision it, and you just don't have a margin for error, or there's not a lot. And like one team we hadn't talked about, like Iowa State, is really good.
Yeah.
But there's just there's going to be some tough matchups, and there's just going to be some games though to where when you show up and you play the Cincinnati's or the UCF, you've got to win those games, and we already talked about the Kansas States and the Oklahoma States games and things like that. But Kansas State, I think they're still pretty good, even though that, they've dealt with some turmoil, missing a player and one of their key cogs, and kind of sorting through all that. But man, it's just not, that's the fun part and the maddening part about the Big 12. There's just not any gimmies, man.
Yeah.
And you're getting better next year. The league will be better next year than it
Sure it
is
will.
now, based on the additions. And I don't know how they're going to necessarily do the schedule yet. You're going to play 20 conference games and less non-conference games, if you will. So we're sitting here 11-2 entering conference play, but next year you could subtract, instead of playing 13, non-conference games, you're just going to play 11, I
11.
guess
Yep.
it would be. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Gonna be
Oh yeah.
gonna be
I mean,
even. It's just hard to even wrap your mind around it being tougher than it's been, but it very well could be next year, because this has been the toughest league in the country, at least the last 5 seasons, if not more. So
yeah, because you're adding you're adding teams that can beat you on any given night, but really what you're adding is another team that can win the national championship.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what will join your conference next year with Arizona. I mean, because right now I think that Kansas and Houston are teams that could win a title. I don't know if they will, but I mean they are in that conversation, and so is Arizona, which will be joining your league next year.
Lovely. So now shift over to football. Since we've last talked, the portal is kind of settled in for Texas Tech. Actually, as we record this, technically the portal window closes today. This I guess there's going to be no more surprises expected for Texas Tech. What is your, I guess, feelings towards what Texas Tech did in the portal? Was it enough? And Texas Tech, help me on this, but they can still get guys. It's just your last day to enter the portal today, right?
Yeah. But there's still players that are in the portal. Those
Right.
can still be recruited, contacted, added, all those kinds of things. I mean, this will kind of start to settle down a bit as the semester for most schools gets close to beginning here in the next week to 10 days. I think you added a lot on offense, which is what you needed to add. I think you
Yeah.
added, you kind of rebuilt your offensive line, which is what you desperately needed, and you hope that you have done well there because you can't get a mulligan on this stuff.
No, no.
And what you did with your 4 offensive line additions is largely going to impact whether you're really ultimately any good or not next year. I mean, that's just kind of to dumb it down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think according to most, they did well. Yeah, they did well. They added what potentially 3 to 4 pieces that will start for them on the offensive line. Caleb Rogers and Ty Buchanan factor in there, obviously at some level.
Yeah.
But that was the first and foremost biggest thing that you needed to address and get done, and you obviously did it because you lost some pieces there, and obviously we know Monroe Mills left, and Landon Peterson left, and Seth Martin left, and Jacoby Jackson I believe is still in the portal. I'll be interested to see if guys like Jacoby Jackson, could he come back here? Could Nehemiah Martinez come back here? Are they not a lot? Are they not invited to
Sure.
come back? There's some, because I don't think either one of those 2 players have found a new home yet, as far as I know. I could have missed something, but
No, I don't think so.
yeah. So that's the deal there. But as far as no more surprises, I mean, you still are on the hunt for a defensive tackle, an interior defensive tackle. You will add one,
Sure.
whether it's in the coming days, because I think you have a visit set up early this week with somebody from Arkansas. There's one that hopped in from New Mexico State that may end up at A&M. There's one that I think you were in on. There's one that from Michigan State that just hopped in the portal. So there's a lot going on, but yeah, I mean, you definitely need to add some size, age, and experience on the interior of your defensive line, because Tony and Jalen, good old faithful there, they're not there anymore. And so Quincy Ledette is like the last man standing. And then you've got all these young pieces, the developmental pieces, these guys that you hope take next steps. But I think you'd like to add some beef and muscle and size and experience up front.
Yeah. When you look at what Texas Tech has, like you mentioned, those that are in the know have Tech ranked anywhere from 5 to 10 in terms of portal incoming rankings. So you've done well as a whole, but you've still got to get those pieces like interior defensive line. Is there anything else that you think is being targeted specifically, or how many spots does Tech even have open to add in the portal? I mean, you've added, I think you're at 11 right now,
Yeah,
signees from the portal.
great question on great question on spots available. I just quit trying to figure it out. The only
Fair.
position I can envision that you would look to, one is if there's somebody that hopped in that you knew and it was an upgrade, or okay, we need to figure out a way to make this work. So that regardless of position. But I think if you wanted to target it, I think it would be an edge rusher, because I
Yeah.
still am not positive about what Steve Linton is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it sounds like he's returning, but that's one that you keep an eye on. Now they are deeper there if they're healthy. I mean, you've got your, Amir Washington, who we just saw in the bowl game, has been moved
Sure.
outside, and then everybody. I hope they don't forget Isaac Smith.
Oh,
He's
absolutely.
I think got a bright future, and you still have your Dylan Spencers and some different options there. But I think and then Steve Linton, hopefully. But if Linton were to declare or whatever it may be, I think they would try to fill that void. But again, we're asking for, because what you've ultimately seen is that offensive linemen and defensive linemen are the hardest to find and add quality ones because there's not very many good ones out there.
Yeah,
And the ones that are everybody wants them. It's just kind of no different than when you're recruiting guys,
exactly. Yeah.
and so that's kind of, yeah, but that's what I would say is that it's definitely defensive tackle. But the only other thing I would say is maybe somebody on the edge that, is a pressure type player that if you envision that would be an upgrade and all that, but some of that may be tied to Steve Linton.
So, shifting out of the portal into the bowls overall with Texas Tech. Someone did ask an interesting bowl question. I think we've gotten something similar to this. This one from Jason says, "What's going to happen to all of the Big 12 bowls or all of the Pac-12 bowls? Does the Big 12 pick up any of those bowl games starting next year?"
Yeah, Jason, I think I'm kind of curious. I don't know if anybody, I mean, I'm sure there's some that have a better feel for it, but I don't think that a lot of us in the sport that are trying to cover this stuff have a great feel for how the postseason is going to work next year past the college football playoff.
Yeah,
Because one, you've got a lot of realignment stuff that's affected bowl tie-ins. You've got with the playoff games being played on the Friday and Saturday, but I think Christmas next year or
yeah,
this year, I should say, in 2024
I
is
know.
on a Wednesday. Well, I believe it's either the 19th or the 20th or the 20th and the 21st. The Friday and Saturday before Christmas on that Wednesday. So the Friday and Saturday before that, you're going to have a playoff game on that Friday night and then a triple header on Saturday. As far as I know, those are exclusive windows. So they've been putting bowl games, a lot of them, on those weekends. The Red Raiders were, just in one of those,
Right.
on those Saturdays before Christmas. And so I think you're going to have to look at the dates of these games, and I think a lot of it's just going to look a lot different. And oh, by the way, your Big 12 basketball conference schedule
Oh
is
man.
going to start on the 30th and the 31st next year. So you're going to play your first conference game
Yeah,
before New Year's Day next year, and that'll be pretty standard. So when you
sure.
expand that conference, basketball season, you got to move it up a week. So you're going to start it earlier, and so
Yeah,
yeah, there's going to be a lot going on there. And then like here's the funny thing is like your national championship game for football, I think it's not till like January the 20th. I mean, so
that's
so try
crazy.
so try that on. Yeah, I mean
Yeah, it's going to
that's
be
what
what, January 8th this year, and
yeah,
then
and
it's
so you're talking a week and a half later
yeah,
next year, and that's part of what the challenge was of the playoff expansion. They figured it out, but it's the calendar is
yeah,
like part of it. And like you're asking some of these kids and teams to play in 14, 15, 16 games or whatever it is if they were to play it out and I keep advancing. And there's some bye weeks in there, so whatever, so anyway, but that's the interesting part. And this is, I think, this is just a 2-year setup. You're basically locked into this 12-team deal the way they're going to do it. They're just locked in for, I think, 25 and 26.
yeah,
The postseasons, to where the national champion will be rewarded on the 25, which would be the 24 season, and then 26 for the 25 season. But then all the bowl games, yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's still a need for those. I think they're not going
yeah.
away because the ratings are crazy, crazy good. People like, again, what we talked about, people like sitting around and watching football. The attendance has not been great with some of these. I think it's very flawed now with all the opt-outs and the transfer portal and all those things, and that part sucks. I hate that part because you're tuning into these games, you're like, I don't even know who's playing in this game. So-and-so's down to their third string quarterback because everybody else is gone. I mean, just all kinds
Right.
of weirdness. Like the Florida State situation, I thought some people may think it's funny, but it made for bad TV, one, and two, it's just not the best thing for the sport to have the Orange Bowl be like a 60-point blowout because Florida State's missing like 20 to 25 guys.
Yeah.
And that's just that's not what we like or want or have been used to. So, but as far as like the tie-ins and all that, I think that's still probably being sorted through. But like my guess is you'll have like the Las Vegas Bowl. It's not going to shock me at all if you're like there's a Big 12 tie in there.
You got
Like
a commissioner that seems to
well,
love Las Vegas, so that makes sense.
and just West Coast in general, because
Yeah.
that's kind of where you're.
Sure.
I mean, Holiday Bowl.
Yep.
So like some of those cities, like
Sun
you
Bowl.
know, yeah. I mean, yeah, El Paso. Yeah, I don't want to go to that one. El Paso, though, Vegas, San Diego. The Los Angeles area. I mean, I could envision, or Phoenix.
Sure.
More of that in the mix there. So, but I think that remains to be seen, kind of where you're at here, because you've got 16 teams now, and like how many bowl tie-ins are you going to have? 10, 11? I mean, and you're going to get a qualifier into the playoff,
Yeah.
for sure.
Right.
And so, anyway, it's just kind of, the whole thing it's changing.
A lot to sift through for sure.
Yep.
So, last question for you. Speaking of bowl games, the Big 12 did really well in bowl games this year. Looking at the future of the Big 12 and your teams that are returning next year, does that do anything for the perception of the league, or does it matter at all?
Yes, and I guess kinda. I mean, it is. I think when you're trying to justify like preseason rankings or talking up certain programs if
Okay.
they finished up the season well and all that, but it's hard to judge that based on a bowl
Sure.
when there's so many things, as we've just talked about, factor into those games. It's about who you have returning, and because I mean, choice, you look at it. And it's like I've seen a lot of, as we start to now take a peek and like look at, okay, who's going to be picked to do what in the top 25 or in the league rankings. I mean, I've heard a lot of chatter about West Virginia being ranked in the top 25, Kansas being ranked in the top 25. I think Iowa State brings a ton back. I mean, Oklahoma State's going to bring back their entire offensive line and the best running back in the country, statistically, and Ollie Gordon.
Yep.
I don't know what they're doing with their quarterback, as Alan Bowman still tries to sort through his situation. Kansas State, I think, they've got they lost some pieces, but they just won their bowl game, and they've got a stud quarterback coming in. And then you've got, the Utahs of the world, and
Yep.
the Red Raiders, who bring a lot back and then did well in the portal. So yeah, it's gonna be an extremely competitive league next year, and Texas Tech is going to be probably, I bet, middle of the pack as far as predictions goes, and all those things, which is not a bet that doesn't change or mean anything, but that's just kind of what you may start to read here as we go forward.
Level, as always, appreciate the time, man, and we'll do this again, hopefully after a win in Longhorn land.
Yeah,
Be nice.
the last trip there.
The last trip there,
Yep.
at least for some time.
And Coach Gerlich, early, I guess mid this week,
Yep.
she'll host Vic
true.
Schaefer's bunch for the last time in Lubbock, Texas.
That's right.
So yeah, man, it's again part of this change that we're about to endure, or that we've kind of seen coming or been processing, but it's not about to be final in some ways. So yeah,
Yep.
there you go. But yeah, we'll see what we get this weekend, and then, like I said, a huge week next week for Grant McCaslin's bunch
For sure.
at home next week with 2 home games. So
all right, man, we'll talk to you next week. Appreciate it.
all right, man, happy 2024. Appreciate it. Keep hope alive, everybody.
That's Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. It's been the Ask Level podcast, brought to you by Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.